This is not marketing. No! Prepare for learning.
Hi everyone, I am Asher Milgram, the Chief Science Officer of AMA Regenerative Medicine and Skincare, and I'm back with you after about 2 years of a hiatus. So first, let me say hello to our many thousands, or 30 or so thousand patients that have been with us for many years, the 1,000 or so new patients that have come to us this year exclusively for COVID, to the tens of millions of viewers who have been on this educational journey with us as we take deep dives into the science of medicine and physiology that these videos we produced over the last few years. And of course, last but not least, the various medical schools around the world that use our videos for part of their curriculum. Hello to you all. And if you are wondering where we've been for the last 2 years, well, guess we've been deeply in the trenches for the fight with COVID, figuring out exactly what to do and how to treat you all and how to care for you best. And I'd like to say right up front that of the 1,000 or so patients that have come to us for COVID, they've all survived and done very well and very quickly recovered from COVID. So that's part of the good news. We know what to do for COVID. So we are back, and this video today is in fact about COVID itself, about the immune system, and about long-haul COVID. And we have good news about all three of those things. All right. Good news number one, your immune system is amazing. And after 2 years of watching the population contend with COVID, we know this for a fact. If you encounter COVID, which you are likely to sooner or later, your immune system knows what to do. Now, no matter how you look at all the data, a few things we know for sure. That if you're under 70 years old and healthy, your survival rate from encountering COVID is at least 98%, which means that your chances of succumbing to the virus is under 2%. And that's without any treatments. Remember that the governments and the establishments have been saying for years now that there is no treatment for COVID. So if you get it, you just have to run the course. Well, if you're under 70, at least 98% of you are going to recover just fine even without treatment. Now, if you are over 70 and you have some comorbidities that make you more susceptible, then that may go down to about 96% survival rate, and about a 4% you could succumb to this. So remember, these statistics are the statistics if you are not treated, even without any medications. The good news, of course, is that over the last 2 years, we've established for certainty that there are certain medications that are repurposed medications, medications that are well established, for whom there's a very extensive safety profile. We know exactly how to use them and how they work, that are in fact extremely effective against viruses and specifically COVID. These are such medications as Hydroxychloroquine, Ivermectin and Fluvoxamine that are incredibly effective and can reduce the mortality rate by as much as 85–90%. Now, what does that mean? Let's say that you are under the 70 years old category and your survival rate's 98%, which means your possibility of succumbing to this thing or your possible mortality is 2%. We'll reduce that by another 90%, and instead of 2%, it goes down to 0.2%. So your survival rate is now 99.8%. I really hope you understand that. And that, of course, also extends to those that are over 70 and have some comorbidities that make them a little bit more susceptible. Your body knows what to do. And if you're prophylacted properly with these medications, you will do just fine. Now, these medications are all listed on the FLCCC website. That's the Frontline Consortium of Critical Care Doctors who have done an amazing job doing these studies, coalescing all this information, collecting it and figuring out and analyzing it and providing these protocols right on their website. Please stay abreast of what they're doing. Check their website out regularly. Now, remember, of course, the earlier you treat, the better. And that's always been the case with any kind of disease or illness for all of history. Early treatment is critical. Don't let anyone tell you that there's nothing you can do, just go home, and if you get really sick, come to the hospital. No, treat early. Find physicians that will help you do that. All right, now, I want to explain to you one additional thing that's really important. These three medications that I just mentioned, and by the way, Pfizer's coming out with another one, they do not work specifically on any particular virus. They work on the methods that viruses use to get into your cells. Viruses all need to do three specific things. They need to bind to your cell, they need to enter your cell, and once they're in your cell, they need to use the machinery of the cell to replicate themselves. These three plus the Pfizer medication, the new one, they all interfere with the general ability of viruses to do that. So they're not specific to any one particular virus, they work on all the viruses, and in this particular case, they work on all the variants. Really important for you to understand and relax a little bit about this whole situation. So in general, in regards to the COVID virus, what is particularly important is that your body be ready for it, that you take preventative actions to prepare your body for it by the use of these medications and the supplements that are, again, all listed on the FLCCC website. What this means is that when the virus does contact you, and let me say again here, you are going to get this virus. The coronaviruses, once they arrive on the planet, they never leave. They exist in the animal population. It's called an animal reservoir. So sooner or later, you're going to come in contact with it. Better sooner than later. Just be ready for it. So if you are taking these medications and the viral replication is slowed down and the ability to enter your cell is slowed down and the ability to attach to your cell is slowed down, you'll have a very mild case of it, giving your immune system sufficient time to jump all over it and kill it. So the really good news about that is that even when you have a mild case of it, once the immune system is engaged in killing it, you're going to be fully immune to it. You don't have to have a bad case of it to have a good immunity. Even a mild case gives you a good immunity. Now, about the immunity, it's very different than the immunity that the vaccines give you. The vaccine is engineered to recognize one little part of the spike protein of the coronavirus. The natural immunity recognizes the entire virus. So therefore, when there's mutations coming down the road, your immune system will still recognize it because it recognizes the entire virus, not just the parts that may or may not have been mutated. Whereas if the part of the virus that the vaccine was focused on is the part that got mutated, the vaccine won't recognize it. And that's why many people who have been vaccinated still get sick with the Delta variant, because their immune system now is unable to recognize the mutated virus. So once again, your natural immunity will handle the variants. Bottom line, our immune systems are smarter than all the doctors and scientists combined. It's a good thing to let your immune system handle this for you. A second hello to everyone. Obviously you can tell, because I'm wearing a different sweater this time, that this section of the video is actually an insert. We were about to start the section on long haul COVID, and I will get right back to that after I finish this little breaking news section of our video. As you may know, it takes us many weeks to put these videos together. We do a lot of research, a lot of background research, a lot of developing the text and the videos itself, and a lot of editing goes on. And during the course of those weeks, sometimes new information comes in that we need to update the video with. In this particular case, the information is on Omicron, and I want to address that. So Omicron is the newest variant of the coronavirus. Now, what's different about Omicron, different at least in comparison to the Delta variant, is that Omicron has a massive amounts of mutations in it. Now, all RNA viruses, including Omicron, including the COVIDs, including influenza that happens every year, all these RNA viruses are prone to massive amounts of mutations. That's why the immune system often can miss the new variant if the new variant is mutated enough. That's why we have to have a new influenza shot every year. The Delta variant had only a few mutations, and one of them happened to address the spike protein that the vaccine was focused on, and that's why so many people got the Delta variant even though they were previously vaccinated. Well, in this particular case, the Omicron is so wildly mutated, over 35 different mutations, that yes, vaccinated people are going to miss it, and even those with a natural immunity might miss it. Now, previously, we were talking about how natural immunities are definitely superior to any kind of vaccinated immunity because it's much broader. It recognizes many, many different parts of the virus. Now, every person that becomes infected with the virus is going to develop his or her own unique version of immunity to that virus, depending on what sections of the virus your particular immune system is going to recognize. So many people who already have achieved natural immunity from COVID might also miss the Omicron. The good news about Omicron is that it is very mild compared to all the other variants. True, it spreads a lot easier, but when you do get infected with it, the vast majority of people get a head cold for a couple days, and that's basically it. Kids oftentimes are totally asymptomatic to it. So this is not something you need to get upset about. I just want you to understand what's happening and why you might get Omicron even though you were previously vaccinated, or better yet, you had already developed a natural immunity. What's the most important lesson we can learn from all this? Given that RNA viruses mutate like crazy, given that vaccinations don't work like we know for the influenza virus, you have to be redone every year, and given that when an RNA coronavirus mutates sufficiently that even naturally immune people might miss it when it comes around the next time, the lesson here is prophylaxis, what we've already been studying earlier in this video, that there are repurposed medications that are not specific to any one particular virus, but that interfere with any virus's ability to infect a person and cause illness and symptoms. That is key. And so whether the next Omicron or Bomicron or Zomicron or whatever has 100 different mutations, the prophylaxis of ivermectin and the other repurposed drugs is going to work to protect you and make sure that you have an easy time with the virus when it hits, and you'll develop a new immunity to the new variant. Prophylaxis, prevention, early treatment is key, and the Omicron proves it. And that's the end of the breaking news, and now we can get on with long-haul COVID. All right, so now we're at the third part of this little video on long haul, and there is good news about long haul, but first let me explain to you exactly what it is. About 20% of the people who get the virus, as well as about 20% of the people who never got the virus but who got the vaccine, get the long haul syndrome that can persist for a very long time. And the symptoms of long haul COVID could be a lot worse than the COVID infection itself. It kind of works out like this. Some people get the virus and they recover very quickly. And then 2, 3, 4 months later, they start getting sick again with a different set of symptoms. Same thing with those with the vaccine. They get the vaccine, they do fine for a while, and 2, 3, 4 months later, they start getting sick with a whole new set of symptoms. And of course, there are those who get sick initially or get the vaccine initially, get sick right away, and stay sick. Either way, the long-haul symptoms are those that persist for months, and in some cases, we have patients here that have had long-haul symptoms for over a year. There are over 200 symptoms that have now been identified as associated specifically with long-haul COVID. And I'm going to sort them out to you through different organ systems. Let's talk first about your neurology and your brain. Major headaches, both cluster headaches and migraines that are completely debilitating. Major loss of cognitive abilities, which includes the loss of language. You can't complete your sentences. You can't remember the words that you're trying to use. People's names and faces, memory loss, etc. Then there's tinnitus or tinnitus, major ringing in the ears that can be so loud to be debilitating. Paresthesias, which is tingling and numbness in your extremities, in your fingers and your toes and your legs. Sometimes it feels for some people like they're almost paralyzed, or something that looks like Bell's palsy, where half of your face goes numb and begins to sag. And then, of course, peripherally, if your nerves are all inflamed, you can have major muscle weakness and pains in your muscles and pains in your joints. Something that very much looks and feels like fibromyalgia. If it affects your lungs, then shortness of breath, and something that people call oxygen starvation, where you're like gasping for breath, like you're biting the air because you need oxygen. And people wake up in the middle of the night terrified with that feeling. If it is your heart that has been affected, you may develop extremely high blood pressure out of the blue. This is a kind of very dangerous hypertension. Or you may have heard of young teenage boys and young men that have developed myocarditis. Anyone may also develop irregular heartbeats and heart rhythms. If your GI system is affected, you could have ongoing diarrhea or exactly the opposite, constipation. Then, of course, there's poor sleep. And one of the key features of long-haul COVID is extreme fatigue. I mean, fatigue that people say is like nothing they've ever experienced before, is if someone just pull the plug and drain the life energy out of them, where they have a hard time just dragging their butt out of bed in the morning. And we're not just talking about physical fatigue. We're talking about lack of energy intellectually, lack of energy emotionally, lack of energy physically, and of course, lack of energy for the zest or vitality for life. Now, all of this gets caused by a dysregulation of the immune system. And in the second video that we do about the science, I will explain this more. One of the silver linings of this whole COVID pandemic is that a lot of research has been done on the immune system to figure out where chronic illnesses come from. And the chronic illness in case of COVID has very similar mechanisms as chronic Lyme or chronic Candida or Epstein-Barr virus that keeps on coming up chronically over and over again. We're beginning to realize that this is a dysregulation of certain elements of the immune system that just go crazy and won't shut down. Again, more details in the next video. But for now, just know that there are a number of immune cells, and the immune system is filled with dozens of different types of cells, but there's a number of them that get activated during COVID because they have swallowed up that spike protein that everyone hears about. And when they have the spike protein inside of them, they come into a super inflamed state and they stay turned on in an inflammatory state and they persist for months. Now, these particular cells, their job is to patrol the vasculature of your body, your arteries and your veins. And if they're in this super inflamed state, wherever they go, they're bringing the inflammation with them. Now, it's not such a big deal in the big arteries and veins, right? If you look at your vascular system, it's like the big trunks, the big vessels come out of your heart, and like a tree, it branches off into smaller branches, and then smaller yet, and then smaller yet, and smaller yet branches, until it actually gets to the edge of the trees where the leaves are, and that's in the actual tissue of organs where the arteries are now tiny little arteries called arterioles. They are tiny. And that's where the exchange of gases takes place. That's where your blood and your red blood cells are delivering fresh oxygen, picking up the CO2, delivering fresh nutrients and taking out the waste. That's actually where the vitality and health of your tissues and organs takes place, at the level of the tiny little arterioles. Now imagine that these inflamed cells come in there and they inflame all this microvasculature. They get so swollen and so indurated that now the blood doesn't flow, and the red blood cells can't get in there, and the oxygen can't get in there, and the nutrients can't get in, and the waste can't come out. This inflammatory state is actually causing tissue damage to those organs, and that's what long haul is all about. All those organ systems that I mentioned earlier and the symptoms that go with them, that's because that particular organ, your brain, your neurology, your GI system, your liver, whatever it is, has become inflamed and now it doesn't function well. The inflammation that occurs in COVID is specifically because of the spike proteins that are part of the original virus. These spike proteins are not just where they connect to the cells. The spike proteins are themselves toxic to the human physiology. This is a new thing. We've never seen anything like this before. And quite frankly, we didn't know it in the beginning, or I imagine those people who were developing the vaccines would have not targeted the spike protein for your body to make in the case of the mRNA vaccines. That's why you can get sick from the spike protein from the vaccine, not just from the original virus. It's these spike proteins floating around in your blood and being ingested by certain of these immune cells that cause the inflammation throughout your body and all your organ systems. So the question is, what do we do about this? Now again, going back to the FLCCC website, they have listed the medications. Again, these are also well-known repurposed medications to help shut down those inflammatory cells. But then you still have to deal with the tissue damage that's been accruing. Without that, you're going to have a very slow, painful, and protracted recovery to get back to health. So how do we repair these tissues, these organs that have been damaged by chronic inflammation? There are 5 modalities that work extremely well. The first one is called apheresis, which was developed here in the United States back in the 1980s and perfected elsewhere in the world and now used extensively for long-haul chronic infections and illnesses. What apheresis does is filters the blood. Let me explain very briefly. When you've had a long-term infection and a long-term chronic inflammation and damage to the tissues, your blood accumulates with debris. Debris from viral overloads, debris from bacterial overloads, like in the case of Lyme, and actually particles and debris from tissue that's been degraded and degenerated and destroyed. And this stuff floating around in your blood are classified as endotoxins. They are toxic to you. And your body is going to have a very difficult time healing while it's toxified. You got to get that stuff out of you. Now, normally, it's the liver and the kidneys that filter your blood. But the kidneys and the liver aren't designed to filter debris out of your blood. The best analogy is a coffee filter that catches the coffee grinds and lets the good coffee flow through so you can enjoy it. Your body doesn't have a filter like that. Well, that's exactly what apheresis does. And right now you're looking at some pictures of how it works. The blood comes out of one arm, goes through this machine, gets filtered in there. It also gets ozonated in there, and the cleansed and ozonated blood goes into the other arm. And many of our patients feel their brain fog lifting right during the very first session with the apheresis device. Now, one of the names in the market for the apheresis device is called EBOO, E-B-O-O. Stands for extracorporeal blood oxygenation and ozonation, and to that you have to add the F for filtration. EBOO, or apheresis, extremely important. And even the worst cases, none of our patients have needed more than 5 sessions with the EBOO in order to cleanse their blood and get the toxins out. Modality number 2 is ozone itself. Ozone comes in the EBOO apparatus, and you can also have it separately. And this is extremely important because of the effect that ozone has on mitochondria. And again, I'll go into much more details of mitochondrial health in the next video. The bottom line is this: every cell in your body has mitochondria. It's the mitochondria's job to process the oxygen that you breathe, and from the energy of those electrons create the ATP, which is the chemical fuel that every cell in your body needs to function. During chronic inflammation, your mitochondria suffer horribly. They're not operating well, and you begin to lose them. The ozone re-stimulates those mitochondria. It ramps them up so you can produce lots and lots of energy, and actually encourages your cells to create more mitochondria. And this is essential for life, and here absolutely critical to regaining the health and vitality of these damaged tissues. The third modality are IV therapies. Many of you have heard about IV vitamins, and these are all very important. But in particular, there are 2 IV therapies that are very important, specifically, once again, for mitochondria. One of them is called NAD, and again, I'll go into the science of that in the next video. And the other is something called sodium ascorbate. It's a form of vitamin C. The third critical IV therapy for long haulers are peptide therapies. These things are extremely important for the health and vitality and functionality of your mitochondria. You absolutely need to focus on that. And there's a whole division here in our practice about mitochondrial and metabolic health. If you want to get your energy back, and you're one of those that's suffering from extreme fatigue, it's because your mitochondria are dying on the vine. You need to help them out. The fourth modality is called hyperbaric oxygen therapy, wherein you get into this amazing cool chamber. It looks like from Star Trek or something. You're pressurized in that chamber, and in that chamber you're breathing pure oxygen. The combination of the pressure and the oxygen causes the oxygen to dissolve in all the fluids of your body, so that every single cell and every single tissue and every single organ becomes super saturated with oxygen. Remember that the damage that accrued to your tissues because of the chronic inflammation and all the arterioles and vasculature in your organs and tissues made it almost impossible to deliver oxygen to your tissues. They are starved with oxygen. And of course, without oxygen, the mitochondria don't function. So how do you get oxygen to tissues that are so swollen that the blood doesn't want to flow there? The only way you can get oxygen there, literally the only way, is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And let me tell you, when you have those neurological issues, the headaches and the throbbing migraines and the pounding cluster headaches and the paresthesias and the numbness and all that stuff, oftentimes the very first treatment, patients begin to relieve or experience a relief of those headaches. It's going to take more than just 2 or 3 of these. Usually it takes 10 or even 20 of these for the severe cases. but it will heal your neurology. Now, the last of these modalities are stem cells. And of course, I have to be very careful when I speak of stem cells because the FDA has very strict regulations about how we're allowed to speak about them. But just know that stem cells are the holy grail of regenerative medicine. And if the other four modalities are bringing you to the top of the vitality mountain and you need that extra push to regenerate tissues that have been damaged, stem cells are the holy grail. They are expensive and hopefully we don't need them, but they are there for you if we do need them. So, in summary, as toxic as the spike proteins are, whether you get them naturally or from the vaccines, the fear of this thing, the derangement that's going on in our society about COVID, the incredible craziness about COVID is as unhealthy for you as the virus itself. So hopefully this good news and this knowledge will help you recenter yourself and come back to your center where there's some peace of mind and some stability and equanimity. You don't have to engage in all the craziness out there, knowing that your immune system, designed as it is by God, is smarter than, unfathomably smarter than all the doctors and scientists out there put together. And with the help of some of these incredible medications that we mentioned, that we already know are safe to use, you can protect yourself against this thing, develop a natural immunity, and come back to your healthy, vital, joyful life. As much as we can do with all our knowledge and science and experience and medications and all those modalities that I mentioned that we have here and that we specialize in here, quite frankly, the miracle of healing is, well, we don't take any credit for that. The miracle of healing is truly in the hands of God and in the hands of the divine. And we are simply incredibly privileged to partake in that and to help you with that. So until the next video with all the science, we'll see you later.